I call to order the regular city council meeting of this Monday, March 2nd. I'd ask that you please silence your cell phones if you have them. And we will start with item 1, which is the roll call.
Blessum.
Here.
Fuller. Here. Hayes. Here. Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Samuelson.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 is the mayor's report. Just very briefly, there were plenty of activities since the last council meeting, to include the Chamber Board of Directors meeting, one-on-ones with the city manager and city attorney, a Task Force 21 meeting with Senator Hoeven, the opening of the Airport Military Welcome Center, dedication up there. Also met with the Energy Project team, Brian May and his folks who were in town. I got to visit with fourth graders at the North Plains Elementary School, which was all kinds of fun. Met with some folks from Dunkin' Donuts who were here in town looking at properties. Went to the strategic planning meeting that Minot Public Schools is engaged in, and went to the MPO monthly board meeting, as well as the 5th Bomb Wing Annual Awards last Friday. And beyond that, calls and emails and so forth. So that concludes my report unless there are any questions. Seeing none, if that's the case, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My report is attached. If you have any questions, I stand by for those. With no questions, I'd like to introduce the new executive director, Allison Ritter of the Western Dakota Energy Association. I'll give Allison some time to introduce herself and her program.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me today. For your record, my name is Allison Ritter, and I'm the new Executive Director of the Western Dakota Energy Association. Before the meeting, I went by and said hello to all of you and gave you a handout, just a little bit about who Western Dakota Energy Association is and why it matters. I took over this job in July, and our former executive director was Jeff Simon, and it was very important to me when I took over this job that I would either meet with or appear in front of all of our counties, our major cities, and just say hello to all of our members. And it was important to me to do that in person, so you could have a face to go with the name, but also so I could have faces to go with names as well. And so it's taken me a little while to get up to Minot to appear in front of you, but that's because I spent the better part of the first 6 months of becoming executive director, getting out to Western North Dakota and really talking to members out there, listening to their concerns and their needs, and just hearing about what they have going on. And then, of course, you know, with North Dakota and winter sets in and makes it a little difficult to travel, although we've had somewhat of a mild winter. So I saved you all for March. So I appreciate you being patient with me, getting up here and getting out to visit with you all. Part of those trips included roundtables, included discussions with members about how they use the gross production tax, which we all know is so important and so vital to our communities. And as a matter of fact, when I took over this position, that was made very apparent to me from the very beginning, that the role of this association is to protect the gross production tax. And you'll see on the handout that I gave you that our advocacy includes protecting that gross production tax. And so in the interim, our association is working on a study. We're asking some of our members, how do you use the gross production tax? What does it fund within your communities? And how can we best support you protecting that vital in lieu of property tax? Because many people forget that the oil industry does not pay property tax in the state, and that is one of the main revenue sources for many of our communities, is that property tax that's coming back from the oil and gas industry. And so we're working on that study, and we've asked the city of Minot to help us participate because we want to be prepared to show how vital that is to the legislature come this next session. You never know how things are going to change in the session. It's always it can be unpredictable at times, and so my background is in public relations and PR, and so I want to be prepared and ready to defend that GPT should we need it come next session. Oil price, we never know what's going to happen with oil price. For the longest time, we've been hearing that we're going to be in a downturn with oil price, and then, of course, geopolitical things happen like that are going on right now, and we see an increase in oil price. And so we never know what the oil industry, up, down, what it's going to do. And so we need to be prepared should we be in a low price environment to really defend that gross production tax. But other things that we do, we advocate for having strong schools. We know that strong schools create strong communities, and so we advocate on behalf of schools. We are actually the only organization that uniquely represents counties, cities, and school districts in oil, gas, and coal producing counties. And so that makes us uniquely positioned to advocate for our schools. But we also are supportive of policies that support our oil, gas, and coal industries because we understand that that's the lifeblood of a lot of these communities. Those industries just create the economic base that help that community grow and thrive. And Minot is a perfect example of that, being a hub city and having the location here with so many industries, like supportive industries and supportive businesses. And so with that, if we're supporting the oil, gas, and coal industries, we're going to be supportive of the linear infrastructure that makes those industries grow. A perfect example that I will give to that is, of course, the pig iron plant that's been proposed here for Minot, and that can't happen, right, unless there's a natural gas pipeline that comes from western North Dakota and comes to Minot. And so, of course, we're going to advocate for that linear infrastructure like pipelines or transmission lines maybe that's going to help that value-added industry come to your city. The example I really want to give is last week I attended an interim legislative meeting in Center, and there was a county commissioner there, and he was talking about oranges. And he said, it's not about how much juice you can squeeze out of the orange, but attracting more oranges when he's talking about economic development. And I thought that was a great way for a county commissioner to explain how they look at attracting new businesses to grow their economic base. So if he is supporting the oranges, well, then I guess I'm supporting the limbs that the oranges are going to grow upon to make sure that the communities can grow and they can thrive. With this handout that you have, I'm actually providing that to every legislator that I'm trying to meet in the interim. Just like getting in front of county commissions and city commissions, my goal is also to meet with every single legislator I can before the next session begins, so they understand the importance of our association, but also so they understand the importance of not only the gross production tax, but you can see on the bottom of that handout here the statewide support that the oil and gas industry provides. When the West wins, the entire state wins. Because if we're supporting the West and the industries that live and work in the West, we're supporting statewide projects like roads, bridges, school, and water projects. We're also supporting the funding that goes into the Legacy Fund. Property tax relief, that was a big issue at the legislature this past year. Property tax relief, if you got that $1,600 property tax credit, that's 100% funded by the oil and gas industry. So again, showing that and educating those legislators that if we are supporting the West, the entire state wins. And if you look on your last page there of your handout, you'll see in my conversations with members of our association, it really is a loop. there really is a loop that not only supports the state, but supports the West. A state senator from Dickinson, Rich Warner, always called the oil industry the golden goose. But having conversations with our members, now the conversation, I think, should shift to supporting the golden goose nest. And that nest is the communities of Western North Dakota. Because when we support the oil industry and they pay the in lieu of property taxes, that addresses community challenges through the gross production tax with water infrastructure, roads, things that a community needs to survive. And when you have those things in place and have them where people want to live there, then you have a better quality of life. You have things like Dunkin' Donuts, like Mayor Mark talked about Dunkin' Donuts. If we've got a Dunkin' Donuts coming to Minot, or like in Williston, Target's talking about locating in Williston. And so having those things that improve the quality of life, that makes people want to live and work in your community. And when we have the workforce, it all goes back to support the oil industry. So it's a loop, and that's the message that I'm trying to hit home to legislators about what Western Dakota Energy Association does and how they can best support the West. If you haven't, we have a weekly newsletter that I encourage you all to subscribe to. There's information, you can subscribe to it on our website. We put it out every week on Friday. Former Executive Director Jeff Simon worked his tail off to make that one of the most comprehensive, in-depth energy and government newsletters in the state. If you want to know everything energy, you can check out our newsletter and read about that. It is every Friday, and it's a lot of work, so thank goodness I've got Jeff Simon still sticking around and helping me work on that newsletter. That was really all I had for you. Also, just to let you know, we're hosting our annual meeting here in Minot in October. So I'll be sending out more information to you all, but I would love to have you all attend that. It'll be at the end of October, October 22nd, I want to say, having it here in Minot. We'll be having an infrastructure roundtable in Watford City, energy infrastructure and the impact that it has on the communities. That's May 7th. Y'all are invited to that as well. So that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for allowing me to appear here in front of you today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Council, any questions for Allison? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate you coming to talk to us about the Western Dakota Energy Association. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
I have nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Further, okay. With that, we'll move on then to the city attorney's report.
Mayor, members of council, I also submitted a written report, and I can stand for any questions at this time.
Any questions of the city attorney? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your written report, and we'll move on. Item 5, or Section 5, Item 5.1, report of the Planning Commission. So item 5.2 is a public hearing, case number 2026-05, and it is an engineering text amendment. And so is there anybody who wishes to speak to this issue? There's a recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve the attachment. Anybody wishing to speak to this item? Last call. Seeing none, is there a motion from the council? Alderman Fuller.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and proceed as recommended.
Seconded by Alderman Pittner. Very well. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and cast our ballots.
The motion passed unanimously.
All right, we move on to section 6, which is the consent items. There are 18 of those items. None of the council members have asked to have any of them pulled. If you are in the audience and you would wish to have one of those items discussed individually, please let us know now, and we'll pull that for individual discussion. Otherwise, this group of items will be passed on consent.
Move approval.
Move to approve the consent items by Alderman Pittner,
Second.
seconded by Alderman Olson. Any discussion on the motion? City Clerk.
Just for the record, item 6.5 was pulled from the agenda prior to the meeting and has been posted since about last week, pulled. So you'll be approving items 6.1 through 6.4 and 6.6 through 6.18.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. It is stricken on the agenda, so we have verification of that. Seeing no further discussion, let's go ahead and cast our votes.
The motion passed unanimously.
We'll move on to our section of action items. Action item 7.1 is the 2026 sidewalk assessment fees. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Fuller?
Before we get into making motions on the fees themselves, I'd like to actually address this because we talked about this last year when it came before us, and I think it's even mentioned in there. One of the things that we do is we only give the homeowners 4 months from end of April, beginning of May through September to get this taken care of, and they really, most of them can't. And so by the end of the year, we've packaged them, they're getting charged double. So what I'd like to do is make an amendment to the proposed 2026 sidewalk assessment policy by adding the following provision. Any property owner receiving notice under section 40-29-03 of the North Dakota Century Code shall be granted until September 1st of the calendar year following the date of notice to complete the required sidewalk repairs prior to the city initiating construction and assessment. During that period, no project administration fees or assessment shall be imposed, provided the work is completed and passes inspection. If the repairs are not completed by that September 1st of the following year, the city may proceed with construction and assess in accordance any fees or interest that we've adopted as a council.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is an amendment, motion to amend. Is there discussion?
Can I just have a question? Steph, do we have to do a motion to amend if there wasn't a motion on the floor?
So my understanding is this was a motion to amend the city special amendment policy. Did I understand that right?
No. So what this is I would like to change the wording in the special assessment policy for sidewalks with relation to the sidewalks, that we give these folks not only the first year from May till September, but we give them 2 years basically, or 2 construction seasons to try and get this done. Is this not the place to be doing that?
So I mean, it's not making the motion on the recommended action. He's taking a separate motion on the special assessment policy
Before we got
itself.
into voting on the
Yes.
specials.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Alderman
I guess a
Blessing.
point of order with that, the city attorney, where do we hold the current policy? Is it in ordinance? Would we need readings on an ordinance change for that?
I think I'd defer to the engineering department on the policy itself.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, our sidewalk assessment policy doesn't deal with the timeline. That is in state law. And even in state law, they don't give, it must be done by a certain date. They leave that up to the local jurisdiction to decide. Depending on what you want to do with the amendment or where that fits, I do have some comments at some point, but I'll wait.
So if I can continue, Mr. Mayor, so Lance, am I getting that right, that right now, it appears to be an unwritten rule? It's not in ordinance, it's not in state statute. So we, in my mind, would have the ability to direct staff on how to implement that policy if a motion along these lines would pass. Is that your thought?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, you do have that ability.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, City Clerk.
I was just gonna see if Rob could send me that, because it was really.
City engineer, did you wish to,
Yep, Mr.
Comment,
Mayor
please.
and members of council, maybe just to reiterate the fact of why we have to go through this process. So what ends up happening when we get a complaint regarding a sidewalk issue is that it's generally a tripping hazard, right? So someone calls, says, hey, I tripped and fell on a sidewalk, or someone down the street when I was walking, they have a sidewalk that is just jointed. Can you go look at it? And so what we do, to be fair, is we go look at that, but then we also just do the block around it so that no one's says that we targeted somebody. And then if there is a fault there, so two panels that have separated by a ½ inch or more, then we give them the option to hire somebody to repair it, or they can elect the city to do it, and then we will take on that project and then have the work done. So the entire reason that we're doing this is because of a safety issue, right? And so you have to think about it in this line where, a kid or somebody is riding a bike and could hit that fault and kind of go head over handlebars. The other thing to think about is if you are an impaired person and are in a wheelchair, depending on how large that fault is, that might stop you from advancing on that sidewalk. And so you may have to backtrack, who knows how far, to the next intersection, then try to go around where that sidewalk has faulted. So my advice or recommendation to you is to look at these and treat them as safety issues that should be addressed sooner rather than later. What we try to do at the engineering department is we send out a letter early in the spring. We generally give them till August to let us know what their plan of action is. So whether that is to hire somebody to complete the repair or to hire us to do the repair, we like to know that by generally by August, so then we can get that list in front of council for approval and then give direction to our contractor on which sidewalks to repair. We've had instances in the past, and they are very few, where a resident has said, hey, I've called around to contractors, I can't find anybody. Or it might be one of our service members that gets deployed overseas and says, hey, I'm trying to coordinate this from somewhere not in the United States. Can I have some extra time to do this? And we say, all right, that's fine. Give us an action plan, and we'll check back in with you in a month or two. So as long as somebody's being fair with us, we're being fair with them. But at the end of the day, we have to look at these as a safety issue and treat them accordingly. So personally, I would have some concerns with a 2-season time frame. If it did have to go to the next season, I would like that to be earlier in the season. So hopefully over the winter, they've found somebody to work with, and then they can have a permit pulled in the spring and have that work done. So that would be my recommendation to you.
Alderman Blessam?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, Lance, you raised a few things in my mind that gave me some trouble with this overall. So, and this may be for the city attorney. I don't know if Dave, for working from the insurance side, when we say it's a safety issue, what are we actually talking about? Does the city have any risk, obligation in this scenario? The homeowner certainly does. They've got, if I trip, I can sue on somebody's property. I mean, that's a given, but hopefully they're insured for it. So my question is if we're going to use as a baseline some risk city-wise, then makes me wonder why we're not just fixing them. Because at some point, if that's really our issue, then that's what we need to take care of. If the issue is that, we want to be good neighbors and work with the community to make things work, I get that. But then we're squarely in the unfunded mandate world, and we're headed down a pretty tough path in terms of enforcement and all the things that go with it. So do we have risk as a city?
City attorney?
Mayor Janser, Alderman Blessam, Council. I think there's always risk that's present, especially when we have ordinances and policies that are setting certain requirements for our constituents. And I think where the risk comes in is, like Lance said, a lot of these are coming on our radar because we've received a complaint. So at that point, we're put on notice. as to something that's not in compliance with our policies and compliance with our ordinances, and we have a means by which we can address them. I think a lot of times that risk is mitigated based upon like the duties and responsibilities and the bandwidth of staff at that particular moment. But I think the point that the city's put on notice is where the risk determination can kind of start to go up and down depending upon how long we know about it. What did we do to address it? Did we put it on the homeowner's radar? Things of that nature.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can continue.
Go ahead.
So would it not be a better path then to not put these mandates in law? Aren't we inviting the issue when we do this? The problem that I run into is that we've got one little strip of all of our properties that has this big obligation with the city, both with this and snow removal and everything else that goes with it. It says nothing about my driveway. I mean, my driveway could be falling apart and a terrible hazard, but the city has really not much to say about it. I suppose it could become a nuisance in certain ways over time that would hit different parts of ordinance. But this seems to me to go down a really rough path when we start to say, nope, you got to have this. This gets back to some of my other stuff. Not only do you got to keep it up, but by the way, we're going to put it in your yard whether you want it or you don't want it, which we've been doing lately. So my neighbors along 17th Avenue by Edison have all got new sidewalks that are new obligations for their properties. Those have all been added with no choice from them. Those all went in. Now they've got those and they've got new liability risk that comes with that. And the city, I guess I'm hearing now, shares in that risk as well. And so I guess as I look at the item, where my mind went, and I like Alderman Fuller's thought here, I think extending it is gonna help people get a few more of those done on their own accord. I look at, then should the city actually try to recoup additional cost on top of what it even costs? And that's the rest of this item that we're gonna get to. And wow, we're on some really slippery ice here, to just say it a funny way. But I don't know. I don't like this all the way around, and it concerns me that we're bringing extra mandates for people that we're not funding them even. We're being the bank through a special assessment. You could maybe say that that's helping them out the best we can. But I just remember by Edison seeing a tree breaking concrete that was there for 25 years. And I guess maybe that one never got pushed because nobody ever complained about it or something along those lines. It just seems like this is a really tough process that we go through to even make this happen. But I don't know.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you. And Lance, to your point, I get it. There's some risk there, right? There could be an issue. But if it were that big of an issue, wouldn't we say, hey, you have to have it fixed this summer, instead of saying, hey, give us until August 1st and deciding if you're going to do it or we're going to do it? Because, as we talked about last year, we give people about a 4-month window. Those notices go out late spring, early summer, right? And by, like you said, August, they have to let you know if they're going to take care of it or if they can find somebody to take care of it, which ultimately is the biggest problem, right? None of those contractors, those flat work guys, concrete guys, have any time during the summer to do that. So my thought on this was to give them, hey, if we have a late fall where they can get a contractor out there to fix their own thing, then instead of paying, $2,100 to $2,400, which is what I think we are charging for a section, or we're paying when we do it as the city, they're going to pay, the $700 in concrete and maybe a little bit, labor, call it $1,100, $1,200. It's gonna give those people an opportunity to fix it themselves without getting extra fees tacked on and interest and everything else that we've talking about. So while I understand where you're coming from, there is a risk there. Everything that we have in ordinance, cars can park on yards, and I'm going to call this one out because I had a constituent emailing me for a month. Guy was parking on his yard, and we had to give him time to fix it and do it the right way because of our ordinance. And so I would like to see that same thing, that we give that time to the homeowner to be able to do it themselves. So, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
City Engineer.
one more thing. When I first started here a long time ago now, we used to give everyone 30 days. But over time, as our workforce, especially in concrete, has really dwindled, that was no longer reasonable, right? And so we tried to find this time period where, it was reasonable for property owners to find somebody to do the work, but at the same time, try to protect the public, right? So we'll mark it with spray paint, or we'll do things to try to draw attention to it, and then balance that with trying to allow people to find somebody to do their work. The only other thing I maybe want to, just to point out, you know, in our thinking, especially when it comes to the fees and why we do all this, we look at the sidewalk issue and the maintenance thereof as more of as a nuisance, right? Similar to how if someone doesn't mow their grass and it gets higher than 8 inches and someone calls the city and says, hey, my neighbor isn't taking care of their lawn, you know, can the city come and deal with this? Well, we have a process for that, and we go out and take pictures, and we have to document and then do follow-ups and track that, and then Public Works eventually goes out and mows that property's grass and then assesses them that cost. Same thing with a structure that is deemed unsafe or has some sort of issue. We give them notice, they have to go fix it. If they don't fix it, then we either come and assess the cost to abate it or do a demolition and then special assess the cost. And so, you know, to us, it's a public safety nuisance. In theory, because of the way that the laws are written and everything else, a homeowner should be proactive and fix their sidewalk if they notice that it's damaged, much like they should cut their grass and make sure that their structure is safe within the community. So when we do the comparison between the sidewalk nuisance and other nuisances, that's how staff is approaching that and looking at it. So I just put that out there for thoughts, that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
So, Alderman Hayes.
Lance, a quick question. Does the city have a list of, they obviously do for licensed work in the right-of-way, of contractors, concrete contractors that can be looked up on the website, on the city website, or given out so homeowners have some options of who to contact?
We, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Hayes, we get that question every now and then. We have a list of all of our licensed right-of-way contractors. So, you know, we got away from licensing just concrete guys and just like excavation guys. Now we call it an excavation license. And so in theory, those contractors are able to do it all. So we can give them that list. That's all public record. But we can't, what we try to do is say, hey, use this guy because, you know, he pulls a lot of permits. So we just give them the list if they ask.
Okay. Alderman Olson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, you know, if you look back, and I know Lance can probably verify this, for years, our residents have complained and been concerned that we have not had good enough pedestrian access. We went through a time in our city where we didn't require sidewalks. And so in those areas of the city, pedestrians are in the street. School kids are in the street. Anyone that needs to access place to place using a wheelchair or a walker, they're in the street. And so we've made a lot of improvements in requiring sidewalks, but the sidewalks have to be in good repair. And I think just as Lance was alluding to a minute ago, it really doesn't come as a shock to a homeowner when they hear from the city that their sidewalk is out of compliance. They know, they're there every day. They're just waiting, some of them, to hear that they have to fix it. And so I think knowing that that's one of the responsibilities of home ownership is to take care of the sidewalk, I can't vote in favor of extending that time out because I think the accessibility is too important.
Okay, so we have a recommended action, and we had Alderman Fuller's motion to change the rules about what we're going to do. Did that get a second, by the way? Alderman Samuelson? Okay, so we have that motion before us. Any further discussion on that motion? Alderman Hayes.
One other, as far as a safety issue, if it's a safety issue or categorized, it should be dealt with immediately, not in 4 months.
So if there's a trip hazard, we should deal with it or have some way or provisions to deal with that immediately. Do we have anything in place that,
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Hayes, there are some instances where the sidewalk is disjointed so bad, from a frost heave usually is what happens. I know the street department's put out like an orange cone by it to try to draw attention to it. But again, what we've been trying to do is balance that you know, homeowner aspect of trying to find someone to do the work in the safety aspect. So we do what we can to try to draw attention to the issue. It can be done faster, but, you know, that will take away maybe some people's ability to try and hire a contractor on their own. So there is a balance there that we're trying to find.
yeah, my concern was just the, you know, if it, no difference in 4 months versus another building season. If it's that critical and needs fixed for safety, it should be done before the 4 months. Not wait for, you know, the end of 4 months. Another building season isn't gonna make any difference, time-wise. If it needs done, it needs done immediately.
Alderman Pittner.
Question for Lance. Lance, when we send these out, I wanted to catch you before you sat down.
Right.
How many actually get assessed on average versus homeowners take care of it themselves?
It varies by year, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Pittner. Generally, we'll send out usually around 50 to 60 letters. I would say on average, half or a little more elect for the city to do it. And then the rest are done privately.
Alderman Pittner, continue.
And then of those ones that elect the city to do it, do they let you know at the forefront of the letter being sent out, hey, just get this done? Or is it nothing was done and then the city has to step in?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Pittner, it's a little bit of both. So the letter that we send, they have a checkbox if they want us to do it or if they're gonna take care of it, so we get that back from them. We send them an envelope to send it back. It's a certified letter. There are times where we do not hear from them, and that's why we send it certified, so that we try to get it back. So we'll get the green card back that said it's undeliverable. So that happens as well. You know, we've done what we can to try to contact them, and then they would go on our list to have the work done and assessed.
Alderman Pittner.
How many calls do you get after the fact? You know, someone gets it assessed to their property, then they call you and say, what the heck? I was gonna take care of this.
I would say it's one every couple of years.
Okay. Any further questions for the city engineer? Okay, thanks, Lance.
You're welcome.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, it's time to cast our votes.
The motion passed 4-3 with dissent from Janser, Olson, and Pittner.
All right, moving on. So we now have the extended timeline for the policy, and we're back to the action of approving the amended policy. What are your wishes?
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Blessam.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to modify what's been suggested in the following ways. So what I'd like to see is that we assess the actual cost of the repairs, you know, knowing that the contract itself is likely to be higher than they would have paid had they contracted it themselves, and that we don't assess any additional fees or interest on those, that the special assessment matches the dollar amount.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for a policy modified as the motion maker stated. Discussion. Alderman Blessam.
So just to continue my thought from before, again, I'm not in the habit, I guess, of recouping the costs for staff. Our staff are paid and they're paid their salaries. And so, this is a portion of those duties and they do them well. So I think that's that part. Acting as the bank, for these special assessments at least gives me some way of sort of rectifying it in my mind with the unfunded mandate that we're forcing on people, that at the very least we're making it as palatable as we can. And so it's my hope that we can do it this way, that we can pass those costs on to the people that are paying the bills through their property taxes to start with, and that little rotation actually works out, and we give them a little bit of time, which is what this does.
Further discussion? Alderman Fuller.
Lance, and maybe you can answer these questions because you were talking about it a minute ago. So you said last year we may have assessed 50 to 60 out there, and half of them did it. I'm sorry, we may have sent 50 to 60 letters. Half of them did it themselves. Of those 50 or 60, or sorry, of those 25 that we did, that's roughly $60,000. Do you know, did we take out a bond to do that work, or did we borrow money to do that work in any way, shape, or form?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, I don't believe so.
Okay.
But that'd be a question for the finance director,
Okay.
just to confirm.
Dave, no?
Getting
Okay.
head nods
So
from the- yeah.
I guess my question to my colleagues, thank you, Lance, I appreciate it. The question to my colleagues is, if it didn't cost us anything to do this other than the taxes that these people have been paying in and are sitting in our general fund, why would we charge them an additional 5.5% interest if they want to take their time to pay it? I mean, I understand that we are acting as a bank, but these folks are paying in their property taxes. Now they're paying maybe more than what would be normal for this thing. And, if we amortize over 10 years, I think that was the language I saw in there, over 10 years, a typical person's going to pay $780 more in interest if we're using the 10-year treasury plus 1.5. If they do simple interest, they're going to pay $1,300 more. If we're not taking bonds out or borrowing money to do this, I don't think we should be charging interest to the community members. So I'm going to agree with Mike on that.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I think it's time to vote.
Just to clarify, it's to assess actual repair costs to the property owner and not assess any additional fees.
Or interest, right?
The motion passed 6-1 with dissent from Alderwoman Olson.
All right, moving on. 7.2, the 3rd Street and Central Avenue reconstruction, documented categorical exclusion, number 4826. So this is recommendations relative to the reconstruction of 3rd Street, which is in some phases, and so this covers the first part of that activity. And we have Lance and engineers, I think, to kind of give us a little bit of overview of this.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Tonight I have with me Matt Kinsella and Levi Heller from Apex Engineering Group. They've been doing all the engineering on our 3rd Street reconstruction project. So tonight they're going to provide you a presentation that walks you through the various options that we have for both segments, gives you some background on the environmental process that we had to go through for the project, and provide some recommendations for you at the end that you can vote on. Basically, what we're looking for tonight is what we call a decision document. We present the options to you. You elect which options you want to move forward. Mayor will sign that. We send that into the DOT as part of our, essentially like a record of decision. And then that will allow us to have the direction we need to do the final design for the project and eventually put that out for bid in accordance with what you decide. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt. He'll walk you through that, and then if there's questions at the end, we'd be happy to answer all those.
Thank you, Lance. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having us here tonight to present the 3rd Street project to all of you. My name is Matt Kinsella. As Lance mentioned, I'm the project manager for Apex Engineering Group for this 3rd Street project. With me presenting tonight also, I have Levi Heller, also with Apex Engineering Group. And what we want to try to do tonight is just give you an overview of what we've been doing on the project to date, the development activities through preliminary engineering, the environmental process, developing our alternatives, the outreach that we've done with the public, and then go through those alternatives with you and then talk about some cost and schedule matters at the very end. Okay, we'll start with the project location. What we're looking at with this project corridor is about 6 blocks of 3rd Street in downtown Minot and about 1 block of Central Avenue. As you can see, though, what we have is 2 different segments that we're looking at with the project for construction. We're going to divide it into segment 1, which is 2027 construction, as you can see shaded there in the green. And then segment 2, shaded in orange, would be right now planned for 2029 construction. Still to be determined, but that's the target date that Lance and his team is, and our team is looking at. So that one would be out in the future, obviously. And we'll try to, as we go through the presentation today, these green and orange colors for these different segments, we have a lot of different information to present you, so we'll try to track those through the presentation so you can follow which segment we're talking about on different parts of the presentation. Just wanted to make the point too, I think most know this, but the 3rd Street Bridge project is not included with our project. Obviously, consent agenda earlier had a contract that was just awarded to start preliminary engineering for that project, and we'll be coordinating with that group, I'm sure, as we go forward with this one too. So some of the reasons for this project, the purpose and need that we always start our projects out with. First one that jumps to mind is the pavement that's out there. It's really just aged beyond its useful life and it needs to be replaced. So what that does when we have a project like that, we need to reconstruct everything, the pavement and the utilities, is it gives us a good opportunity to look at everything really within the corridor, right-of-way line to right-of-way line. What's the best use for this corridor? What should the street section look like? How can we accommodate all the users that might be using it? So really provides us that opportunity. A few things that jumped out right away with this corridor is the lack of dedicated left turn lanes. Right now you have to make your left turns out of the inside through lane through the corridor. Obviously you can end up running behind somebody that's making a left turn and you're trying to go through, and that causes some delay. It also creates a negative offset if you have 2 left turning vehicles trying to do that at the same time, which obviously can be a dangerous situation to try to look past. So that definitely jumped forward with the corridor as we looked at it. Some intersection geometry that we'll talk about here in a little bit as well are some things that we wanted to look at. And as I mentioned earlier, we really want to provide a street section that accommodates all users. This corridor in particular has quite a bit of pedestrian activity by the Ward County buildings. So that's something that we really want to factor in with our designs and our alternatives. There's also 3 transit routes that use this corridor as well, so we factor those kind of things in too. A couple other items here that we're looking at, of course, with discussion earlier here seemed pretty topical because pedestrian and the pedestrian environment on this corridor definitely needs some improvement. It's not very comfortable to walk out there, so we want to create a more comfortable environment for pedestrians that are walking on 3rd Street. And with that, there's the opportunity to maybe beautify the corridor with some streetscape and aesthetic improvements as well. Of course, we're going to be replacing all the underground facilities, and did want to point out too that while we're not implementing any quiet zone measures with this project, we realize that the quiet zone is not moving forward at this time, but we want to make sure that what we do with this project can accommodate that in the future so we can minimize any future cost if that does end up moving forward. So we are accounting for that in our designs as well. Before I turn it over to Levi here to go through the alternatives and options, I just wanted to highlight some public outreach items for those of you that maybe aren't familiar with it. We really have worked hard on this project to get out there and meet in person with the properties, the businesses that use the corridor. That's something that we have done. We've been able to meet one-on-one with those individuals. We've also met in person with all the key stakeholders that I've listed here above, in addition to some others that we've met with too. The other thing that we did back in August that I think many of you are familiar with is we did conduct an online survey, and we got 421 responses, as you can see, which was just a tremendous response. That's the highest one I've ever seen on any project I've been involved in, so that's a real credit to the community that took the time and everybody to enter in their responses. And I wanted to just highlight a few of those here. Some of you might have seen these that were at the public meeting earlier in November, but the nice thing that came back from this is that I talked a few slides ago about some of those issues and needs that the engineering team saw in the corridor. But as we got these public responses back, it really kind of reflected back from the community that a lot of those same things seem to be important to the community too, such as the lack of left turn lanes, the intersections, the railroad crossing, trying to improve the pedestrian environment, things like that. So it was really nice to get that feedback and also some additional feedback that really helped inform our alternative and option development, which Levi is going to talk about here. So with that, I'll turn it over to Levi.
Thank you, Matt. Kind of a recap on the segments here now. We're looking north to the left. The first segment 1 there, 2027 construction season. We have 3 alternatives. We always start with the no-build alternative, and then we have option 1B, which is the 3-lane alternative, and option 1C, which is the 4-lane alternative, which is similar to what's out there today. And then similarly with segment 2, with the 2029 or later build date, it has the same 3 build alternatives for a consistent corridor. A lot of common elements on segment 1 here. I'm not going to go through all of them because we're going to go into detail a little bit more later on, and Matt already kind of talked to them. But one thing that gets brought up a lot is on-street parking, and what we're proposing is to put a lot of the on-street parking back in the same locations that they are now, maybe mitigating some the closeness to intersections and things like that. But the on-street parking is being proposed to remain right now. All the ADA ramps and sidewalks will be upgraded to current standards. And then streetscaping elements, as Matt kind of talked about too, with kind of the look, kind of to mimic the look that's going on Main Street with the different ornamental items that are going on. Segment 1, the first alternative 1B, is the 3-lane reconstruction, and that has the dedicated left turn lane down the middle of the road, and this would be the preferred alternative. One thing, when we shrink down to that 3-lane alternative, it does give us a little bit more room in the right-of-way to add larger sidewalks, especially on the west side of the road from the 5 feet that's out there now. 1C would be rebuilding something similar to what's out there right now with the 4-lane and no left-hand turn lanes. In segment 1, we have a couple options. Option 1.1 would be the modification of Front Street and 2nd Avenue. Right now, there's that slip lane. I think there's a lot of people that are aware of the slip lane that's going by the old OK Tire store there. And when you pull up to it, it can create a kind of an awkward turning movement. You're looking over your shoulder to the left. It's hard to see traffic coming from the right and pedestrians. The modification to this intersection would be to remove that slip lane, align it properly with a 2nd Street there with a right, and add a right turn lane to go right, and turn that area back into green space. And this would be a preferred alternative. Kind of see what that existing stop signal or stop bar and how far back you are on it, and the issues the traveling public has in that intersection. Option 1.2 would be the 3rd Street and Central Avenue, and this would be adding bubbles. So if you look at the map up there right now, it's kind of what a typical intersection would look like. The bulb outs would be putting these protrusions that kind of go out in the roadway. One One thing with these bulb outs is that they're just going out into the parking spaces, so we're not taking up any lane width or anything like that, but it does give the illusion coming up to the intersection of a kind of a narrowed intersection. So it provides some traffic calming. And this is just preliminary right now. The way this looks is we still have to run truck movements and different turning movements through the intersection to make sure all this works. But along with the traffic calming, one thing it does provide is a space to add traffic signals in there. With the narrowness of the right-of-way in there and the buildings right up against it, we do have an issue finding places to put the new signal stuff that we have. And this is the preferred alternative. Option 1-3, through the traffic studies, the current signals that are out in this intersection right now in 3rd and Central are not warranted per the federal highway guidelines. Working with the state, since there's state cooperation on this, working with them back and forth, and the site issues with some of the buildings that are really close to the right-of-way and the turn signals is that the traffic signals can go back in there, but it would be a 50% share cost to the city. And this would be the preferred alternative. To play an animation here of kind of what the 3-lane alternative would look like. This is looking south, starting down by the 3rd Street Bridge and then moving to the south. Into the Central Avenue intersection. The dedicated left-hand turn lanes. The option with the bulb outs. Continuing on this to the south. Second Avenue and the Front Street intersection. Option 1-1 with the removal of the slip lane. I'm gonna pause that here. This is where segment 1 and segment 2 break. Segment 2, kind of talked about a lot of the same. The quarter is going to be very similar from segment 1 to segment 2. A couple of the things to add on segment 2, which is a later construction date, is we noticed that there's a lot of mid-block pedestrian traffic trying to go to the courthouse, and they're walking outside of the dedicated crosswalk areas there. So we would be looking at trying to put some sort of vegetated buffer or something along the western side of the block by the courthouse to try to channel people to go to the crosswalks, and then we'd be replacing the RRFB signal. That's the overhead signal that flashes when there's pedestrians crossing it. And then streetscaping would be consistent with the rest of the corridor in segment 1. Similar, like I talked about earlier, the alternatives are very similar. The alternative 2B is the 3-lane alternative, which will mimic what we were preferring on the first first segment, excuse me. And alternative 2C, which would be the 4-lane alternative. So once again, no dedicated left turn lanes, and then we have that reduced sidewalk width down to 5 feet because we don't have the room in the right of way to accommodate that. There is one option in segment 2. It's been identified that just west on Burdick, by the parking structure, there's a lot of snowpack that runs down that ramp area there and ends up in the street, and it's not draining properly. So in the springtime, you're getting a lot of freeze thaw action where you're creating puddles that are freezing and whatnot. The alternative or the option here would be to put in some sort of drainage structure to collect all that water and get it off the roadway. continue the video on here from rest of the, this is segment 2 continuing to the south, past the courthouse. And then looking to the north. And with that, I will pass it back to Matt.
Thanks, Levi. Just a few more slides here to wrap up, and then we can take any questions that you might have. Wanted to bounce back real quickly again to the public outreach process. What I was talking about before, a lot of that information was what we took in before we really started working on our alternatives and options, so that really helps us to develop those. So then we developed those, as Levi just indicated, and then we brought those back to the public at our November 2025 public input meeting. And I know that, Mr. Mayor, you were there and a couple others were there as well. At the end of that meeting, we did a poll, which is always kind of a fun, interactive way to just get feedback from the people that are there right at that time. And just wanted to share that here with those members of council maybe that weren't there and hadn't seen that. You can see the questions we asked. The alternative preference was pretty clear on the 3-lane from the parties that were there. Again, similar with option 1 there, Front Street reconfiguration was fairly uniform there too. A little bit more mixed on the bulb outs, but still a slight majority there with the people that we had at the meeting. And again, keeping the signal was pretty unanimous as well. So again, just wanted to share that information for those that hadn't seen it. Now we will go into cost and schedule. So we'll start with segment 1, and there's a lot of information here up on the screen, all the various alternatives and options we laid out here, Levi just laid out. But to bottom line it, if you move to the right side there, the totals for each alternative and option, those are listed in that right column. And then we've also tried to boil those down to the federal portion and the city portion. As you can see, federal portion in red, city portion in blue. The federal contribution is capped at 4.6 million, as you can see. So with those options, even though parts of those options could be federally eligible, as we've shown in that federal eligible column, in essence, they become 100% city funded because we've already used that 4.6 million. So we do still like to track that though, because on occasion some additional federal funds come into the project, and then we can look at using those for that too. Similarly here with segment 2, again, same descriptions, just with the alternatives in that segment, and you can see the costs there summarized on the right. And these costs were inflated to $2029 for that segment. And then finally, this kind of just really boils it down to the city's contribution and the different sources proposed to fund the city's portion of the project. And this should match up with what was in the memo that Lance provided in your packet as well. Okay, final slide, schedule. So you can see the We Are Here button there on the bottom. And as you can note, if you look at the top bar, really from the beginning, about a year ago until now, we've been working on both segment 1 and segment 2. We wanted to get those decisions established and clear both of those environmentally. But as you can see, starting now moving forward, our focus will be on segment 1, since that's that first construction year in 2027. So we'll probably set segment 2 aside for the most part, and then come back to that in a couple of years to finish up the design and then get that one ready for construction. With that, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that's all we have for you on the presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Alderman Fuller.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Nice presentation. Couple questions. I saw where you guys talked with the business owners downtown and everything like that. I'm sure there's some consternation there because a couple of these businesses will be affected quite a bit. How do we plan to mitigate or offset that for them?
Yeah, excellent question. And that's really been our goal, is to have those, get those early conversations going, make those connections so we can understand what those concerns are. I know like you said, we have heard from a few already that maybe things didn't go as well as they maybe would have liked, during some of the flood control construction last year. So that's good feedback that we can take and try to make sure that we're improving our, construction phasing and access plan to the best that we can. But that is a focus for us, to make sure that we at least get that information. We do the best to make sure that the contractor is going to provide access. Of course, in construction, there's no guarantees and things always change, but that's our approach, and hopefully that'll help that process.
Alderman Blessam.
Thank you. So Matt, just to continue that, like that corridor right there, what does it mean? So someone like Ebenezer's, what does it mean for that business? I mean, are they shut down for a couple months? I mean, is it pedestrian only? Do you have to come in from the east? What's it going to look like for them?
No, not at all. Yeah, the goal would be, well, not just the goal, it's going to be a mandate basically in our plans to the contractor that they maintain access to properties and businesses during construction. There could be some times when there's a very short shutdown, if we're pouring a driveway or if they're doing something like that, but that's something that we always put into the plans as a note to the contractor, and we usually get into even more detail than that if there's specific driveways that need to stay open at certain times or things like that. So to answer your question, no, access will be provided. We're looking into some alternate access routes, through some of the, maybe the 4th Street public right-of-way that is right in front of the foundry there. We're working on some opportunities to work with some of the landowners to maybe find some creative ways to provide access detours to some of those businesses.
And just if I can continue, Mr.
Go ahead.
Mayor. So then on to a couple other thoughts. I always find myself wanting to get right down in the detail of every last little thing. But talk about because these are some of the decisions we've got in front of us. So the bulb outs, if we do those at Central and 3rd, is that the preferred alternative? Because man, it's a lot better for pedestrians. I know that there's some things with the lights and other reasons why that's good. Is it better for pedestrians? Because as I go through there, that's kind of what I see is people trying to cross 3rd there, and it is something that I think we want to do the best we can for, and this is the opportunity.
Yes, that's exactly right. I think that, besides the courthouse area, that was the highest. We did do pedestrian counts with our traffic counts, and that was the highest pedestrian area, no surprise, on the corridor. So I think to answer your question, and Levi kind of pointed this out earlier too, but the bulb outs just provide us a little bit of extra space, right? And the signal poles, the equipment, the cabinet. Right now, the signal cabinet that's out there now is hanging on one of the poles. That's not obviously the preferred way that's usually done. It's nice to have a little bit more room for that. So where are we going to put that? If we don't have those, we just have to start getting more creative. So it provides more room for some of those features and some of maybe the streetscape features that might be attractive for that intersection. And then it also decreases the pedestrian crossing distance across 3rd Street. Rather than it being, say, 48 or 50 feet, we can get it down to more like 35 feet. And that helps with the signal timing and phasing too, as you're looking at those, the intervals that you have to give to those phases.
Yeah. Thank you.
Further questions for? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Much appreciated. City Council, is there a motion on this item?
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Blessam.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we move ahead with the recommendations in the staff memo.
Okay. Moved and seconded to approve the recommended segment 1 and segment 2 recommendations. Any discussion? Alderman Fuller?
Thank you. The only question I have, I guess, on all of this is the bulb outs, right? We see it in downtown on Main Street. I would guess that Brian and his crew aren't very big fans of them because they're all tore up and everything from the graders and stuff. So I'm just wondering, and I get it, it's not a ton of money, but is that something that we really want to do? Because there's been so much complaining about how they look and how they are currently from the ones we have done, so.
Further discussion? Alderman Samuelson.
Thank you. I'm not a big fan of the bulb outs either. I think just for what I've seen truck traffic downtown or them trying to clean the streets, I think it's an obstacle. Now, granted, I don't see planters on these ones, which would make it easier, but I've seen people, construction people and stuff, try to get around downtown, and I've seen trailers pop up over the top of those planters. And to me, I just think we do have snow, and we want to move it downtown, and I think they're a hindrance to being able to do that. The snow piles up on that corner, and I would have to imagine, I don't know if Brian wants to speak, but I can only imagine trying to move snow around those.
I assume that this was talked about, because this is, certainly a feature of our world is snow and everything else associated. I assume that along the path, that side was weighed with some of the other stuff that Matt just talked about what's good about these. So how did you guys kind of end up in this spot, do you think?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, you're correct. And so what I would say is what we're showing tonight are the largest that they would be. And that has to be balanced with all the things that these aldermen had stated before. So we have to make sure that the typical delivery truck can make those radiuses. We have to make sure that when we design those curbs that the corners are able, or they're soft enough where street sweepers and other pieces of equipment can get in there and clean those curbs. Likely, no matter what, damage is going to happen sometimes to those curbs. I will say the ones downtown are not always the fault of our Public Works Department. Sometimes they get hit by others. On this corridor, it would only be City Minot snow removal equipment. And we have really good operators. But it is an obstacle that they're going to have to work around. It's not a straight piece of infrastructure. So when we look from an engineering standpoint, the trade-offs, the public safety, the being able to fit the ADA ramps and the signals, these newer signals now are about twice the diameter of the ones that were designed in the 80s because of updated wind loading. All that has to try to fit in this intersection. So when we look at it from an engineering standpoint, there's always trade-offs in these designs that we have to accommodate. So I would tell you that what you're seeing tonight is worst case as far as their size. They'll likely be trimmed back when we get into final design after we proceed from tonight.
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you. Just real quick, Lance, you're talking about the space that we need and everything. If we go to the 3-lane road, aren't we creating enough space that equipment and everything would fit, the new lights and everything, minus the bulb outs?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, we are creating more space in the boulevard. But what we run into now is we have great issues with trying to get these ADA compliant ramps to fit, right? So the wider that you make that radius at the intersection, you start losing the sidewalk, and the curb comes back towards the buildings. So you have less room to try to make those grades work to stay in the regulations. So the more space you have at the intersection to try to make those ramps fit within all the requirements, the better off you are in the design.
Mr. Mayor?
Alderman Blessum.
Thank you. Lance, one other thing that I was going to ask Matt and then I forgot it. Where you got to, and we talked about this by email earlier today, where we got to with the intersection is, even though the lights aren't warranted, it looks like the public likes that. It's probably our best option going forward. If we decided no, part of our correspondence was a roundabout doesn't fit. So is the alternative right now to replacing the light for the roughly 700,000, would it be a 4-way stop? Would that be the only other real viable alternative at that point?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, we evaluated both a 4-way stop and a 2-way stop. Of course, you can put a 4-way stop just about anywhere, but in this corridor, the volumes of traffic on 3rd Street are so immense that your delays would go through the roof, right? So you would be able to meter traffic fairly well through Central Avenue at a 4-way stop, but you'd be backed up for hundreds of feet each way on 3rd Street. So for that reason, we did not want to go the 4-way stop. 2-way stop was evaluated. But what our concern was is because these buildings are so close to the corners, you go up to the stop bar and you stop, and then you have to creep forward to see around the building. Now you're stopping in the crosswalk. Well, that defeats the whole point of trying to have a pedestrian-friendly downtown core that we're looking at. Part of the grant that we received is called the Urban Grant Program, and that is trying to reinvest in downtown cores. Obviously, pedestrian-friendly cities are important because there's not a lot of parking. Most businesses rely on that foot traffic, so to not have pedestrian traffic as a focal point would sell ourselves short.
Okay, any further questions for Lance? Okay, thanks, Lance. We have a motion and a second to approve the recommended choices for this decision document. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passed 6-1 with dissent from Alderman Fuller.
We're moving on to item 7.3 on our agenda. This is a request by WBH Properties LLC for a forgivable loan of up to $100,000 for facade improvements for a property located at 17 Central Avenue East. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Hayes. Discussion on the motion. Seeing no discussion, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passed 6-1 with dissent from Alderman Samuelson.
Moving on to item 7.4. This is a 2026 signal painting budget amendment. Recommending that the City Council approve a budget amendment in the amount of $65,000 from Traffic Division, capital equipment to Traffic Division, signals, lighting, and maintenance for the purpose of the 2026 signal painting project.
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Fuller.
Second.
Second by Alderman Blessam. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, let's cast our votes.
The motion passed unanimously.
Item 7.5 is an amendment to the Hairball Haven Services Agreement that was passed, I think, on February 20th at our special meeting. As I understand it, what happened was there were some amendments that were requested, but it was too late to get it on the, get it included on February 20th, but they are now before us. And so we do have the original contract that was signed. This is an amendment to that original contract. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Fuller.
Second.
Second by Alderman Blessam. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Item 7.6 is approval of a contract with TPMA for Economic Development Data Services and a budget amendment, and this is an item on second reading. What are your wishes?
Move. Second.
Moved by Alderman Pittner, seconded by Alderman Blessam. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Item 7.7 is a alcohol beverage license for Microtel Inn and Suites for GHM Minot Holding Company LLC. What are your wishes?
Second.
Moved by Alderman Pittner, second by Alderman Fuller. Any discussion of this item? Any discussion? Seeing none, let's cast our votes.
The motion passed unanimously.
All right, we have now come to item 8, which is personal appearances. The rules for personal appearances follow the state statute. Speaker cards are required. If someone wishes to speak, they need to fill out a speaker card and give it to the city clerk, which must include your name, first and last, your address. The address will be held in confidence, and the topic that you wish to speak on. Individuals must submit speaker card information to the city clerk. As I stated, missing information from the speaker card disqualifies the individual from speaking at the meeting. Each individual will be allotted 5 minutes to make comments. The individual will be notified when their 5 minutes have expired. There'll be a clock running. The 5-minute time limit may be extended by a majority vote of the city council. All comments must address the topic identified on the speaker's card, must be pertinent to the city of Minot, and fall under the authority of the city of Minot Council, be directed to the council as a whole. Comments may not be defamatory, abusive, harassing, or unlawful, may not include information that is exempt or confidential under North Dakota open records law, and may not interfere with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Individuals will not have access to the city's audio and visual technology unless by prior arrangement, and individuals may not yield their allotted time to another individual. So this is public appearances. We have first speaker is Wendy Bagley, and she is talking about Robert's Rules of Order pertaining to the prior city council meeting and the meeting on October 6th of 2025. Ms. Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Janser, and also council members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I come both as a resident of Minot, a business owner, small business owner in Minot, and also as one of only 2 parliamentarians, registered parliamentarians in all of North Dakota. I have been studying Robert's Rules for a couple of decades and recently passed the certification test to receive my credentials. And as I've been listening to city council meetings, particularly the one 2 weeks ago, there were some concerns that came up about suspending the rules and the motion to reconsider. I also was at the meeting on October 6th when the similar questions came up, and I wanted to do a written response to that, and I never did. I've been asked by a member of the public to come forward, and I also intend to be writing something within the next 2 weeks before the next city council meeting. So I wanted to share, first of all, in Robert's Rules of Order, which the city council has adopted in your rules of order, comes from this book, Robert's Rules of Order Newly Revised. In section 25:1, it says, when an assembly wishes to do something during a meeting that it cannot do without violating one or more of its regular rules, it can adopt a motion to suspend the rules, interfering with the proposed action, provided that the proposal is not in conflict with the organization's bylaws or constitution, with local, state, or national law prescribing procedural rules applicable to the organization or assembly, or with a fundamental principle of parliamentary law. So let me go over those 3 very quickly. Of course, it makes sense that you can't pass any laws or suspend a rule that's in contrary to state law, local law, et cetera. When it comes to suspending a rule that is in your bylaws, that's a little bit of a different situation. Now, in Robert's Rules of Order, there is a provision that if your bylaws are in the nature of a rule of order, it may be suspended. If not, then it requires that that rule be allowed to be suspended. It should say in that rule that that rule can be suspended. And I believe Alderman Blessam at an earlier time pointed out that there are two sections in your rules of order. The part on debate limitations, and I apologize, I forget the other one. But if you take a look in that, and the debate limitation one, I believe, was in 2-31A5, it says specifically in there that this rule may be suspended by a majority vote. If you go to your motion on to reconsider, that whole section on reconsider does not allow for that part to be suspended. And so I would ask you to take a look at that. And I think the city attorney was very, very much in order, saying that it was not in order to suspend the rules. I apologize. It was not in order to reconsider, but she was incorrect when she said, well, we could suspend the rules. That rule cannot be suspended because it does not say that that rule can be suspended. I am very much in favor of Mr. Blessam, or Alderman Blessam's suggestion to take a look at your rules of order. There are some things that I think could be revisited. I would be very, very pleased to help out the city in that regard at a future time. I wanted to point out a couple other things. When I took a look at suspending the rules, in Robert's Rules of Order, it requires a 2/3 vote, which is more than a majority. However, if I remember at your October 6th meeting, there was a vote and 4 people voted in favor of suspending that rule. Later, after the meeting, I took a look, and if you look in Division 1, so the rules of order are in Division 2 of City Code, but if you look in Division 1, Section 221, there's a section that says computation of majority vote. Majority is 4, but a supermajority is 5. I see I'm just about out of time. I have one more issue I want to make. May I have a little bit more time?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, you've got another minute, Wendy.
Okay, I appreciate that. The final point I want to make is when it comes to the motion to reconsider, this is considered a bring back motion. There are several motions in Robert's Rules of Order that bring an issue again before the assembly. This also goes along with a principle called the settled rule. In other words, when an assembly takes a motion or takes an action, you want to preserve the integrity of the assembly and not keep rehashing that same issue over and over again. Robert's Rules, one of the primary principles is efficiency. Now, an assembly should be able to do what it needs to do, but there are ways to handle a bring back motion. And most of the time, when you revisit an issue, it requires a higher threshold. Sometimes those higher thresholds would be, instead of a majority vote, it would be a supermajority vote, or 2/3. It may mean that there be advanced notice. For example, when the city attorney was referring to Section B and suggesting that a resolution can be made to amend the rules, there should be advanced notice on that to bring that issue back again. Another way is to have the entire assembly versus just those who show up. Overall, I do agree with Alderman Blessam that these are some tricky issues that need to be looked at so that there can be orderly discourse among the city. Again, I would love to work further with the city on these issues to provide additional advice and expertise. Thank you so much for your time.
I have no other speakers' cards, so given that, we will move on. Item 9 is miscellaneous and discussion items, and there are no specific things. Alderman Pittner.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider an item 6.1 from our meeting held 2/17 of 2026, and that was the motion to, in regards to auctioning off liquor license.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to amend that original motion. I'd actually like, we had previously stated that would be a sealed bid auction. I'd actually like to make an amendment to,
Okay,
Have-
so Alderman Pittner?
Yep.
I think before we
Oh,
go into
yeah.
that, I think we need to
yes, yes.
decide on whether your motion to reconsider actually passes. Ray?
Jump the gun.
So,
Got excited.
any discussion on the motion? City Attorney, did you have something here?
I guess my only recommendation is that the city clerk read the motion that will be reconsidered, because there is a few different parts to it. So that would be my request.
So for the motion that would be on the table if we did reconsider was to approve and adopt the proposed council findings and auction the license with sealed bids for 60 days with no bid minimum.
Okay. So that would be what we would be reconsidering. And City Attorney, as far as you can tell, that motion is in order?
Yes, that'd be my ruling, is that would be in order. It's within the next succeeding meeting. It wasn't noticed in any of the special meetings that we've had in between the previous meeting and this meeting. So under our current rules of order, it's my opinion that it's in order to be considered.
Okay, very well. We have that motion and a second. Any further discussion on reconsidering this thing? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Okay, so we are able to reconsider that. And Alderman Pittner?
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to amend that we do it via live auction to be broadcast in chamber, in this chamber. Bid numbers to be required to be obtained day of prior to the bid. Start the bid at $1 and payment due to by the winning bidder within 72 hours of an approved background check.
Second.
Okay. We have motion and a second. Alderman Pittner?
Again, this is just, this is within the purview of reconsidering a motion. This was, just full transparency, this was me laying in bed thinking about our meeting, the day after, what we had done and reflecting on my time on the Alcohol Ordinance Review Committee. And one of the items that came up was transparency and, being pro-entrepreneurship, pro-business. I think this provides a better path forward, not that it wouldn't be accomplished with the previous way that we had been approved. But I think this just allows a cleaner, more transparent option.
Okay.
And just a point of clarity, so the first part of the motion that City Clerk McWilliams read pertained to an order that was approved by the council, and that would remain unchanged.
Correct.
So the only thing we're considering is changing the way the license gets auctioned off, resold. Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote on the motion.
The motion passed 6-1 with dissent from Alderman Samuelson.
Okay, we're still on miscellaneous and discussion items. Alderman Blessam.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to inquire, a few meetings back, we had given some direction and to the city attorney, I know what your office has been up against. What's that?
Still have to vote on the original motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Amendment.
That was the amendment. I'm sorry. I jumped in too soon. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
But we need a motion,
Yep.
or, well,
I would move approval as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, let's vote.
the motion passed unanimously.
Okay, so back to you, Alderman
Yeah,
Blessing.
back to me again, thank you. So we had asked, and one of the main reasons why I'm bringing this up is that we have our first ALPR committee this week. One of the questions that we had in our prior discussions was around Freedom of Information Act requests. And the motion suggested that we hear back by the middle of February. I know what the office has been like, so I appreciate that. I just wanted to check in, what are your thoughts? Are we waiting for an opinion from the AG's office, or are there pieces that we may get that will help us as we're working through this?
Let me check in on that, Alderman Blossom, Mayor Janser, and see if there's, I know the police department's kind of been working with representatives from the Attorney General's office on that question.
Okay.
So let me check in on that and see where we're at with it.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, any further miscellaneous and discussion stuff? All right. Seeing none, I would remind the public and remind you all that the applications are being accepted for the Good Neighbor Award, which will be in April. So if you know of somebody that would be a good person for that, please get them nominated. We're on item 10.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.